Welcome to our live. Tonight we're going to be interviewing Rey Wicks, who is the author of Legion of Fire. It's her debut novel, and I'm super excited to talk about it and share it all with you when Rey gets in here. Perfect timing.
So in about 10 minutes. Hi.
Hi, Rey.
What's going on?
Welcome. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. We've had a super busy day today. We have, when we bought our house 5 months ago, it was kind of a as is buy. And when we got in here and we started looking around, we found a whole lot of mold. And so we had to rip out our kitchen and redo that, the laundry room, and today was the bathroom. So if I'm a little bit fuzzy, then blame the mold. But I think at this point we got it out.
That sounds rough.
Oh yeah, it's been a blast.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you were able to make some time this evening to talk about your new book. I have it up behind me here because it's so beautiful. And you have your copy too, as you should. Gorgeous.
It's holding up my amazing glass that flips people off.
That's lovely. I love it.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. It came out a lot more beautiful than I even imagined. There was a lot of times that I spent making my own covers for this book whenever I was considering self-publishing option, and I am just not technologically sound at all. Like, I was so scared I was going to mess up logging into this Instagram that I had to message you and go, hey, how are we doing this? Because I don't know. So no, this came out so much better than I could even imagine. I'm very, very proud.
You should be. It's gorgeous. The cover is stunning. The inside, the content is amazing, and I'm so excited to dive into it and talk about it with you. So let's start at the very beginning, right? Because this is your first novel. This is your first big thing that you have put out into the world for people. And I would love to know about like your process, like how you came about writing the story, how you developed it, and decided that this was something you wanted to share with everyone.
Well, the funny thing is I published in the past, and it was a horror novel and a nonfiction, and the horror came out really bad because I'm really bad at writing that kind of thing. And the nonfiction was so incredibly personal of my own life that it really turned me off to writing. So I quit writing for years. And this whole story inspired from just like sitting and watching a lot of Game of Thrones and just reflecting on my past as I've, grown from my former lifestyle up until, where I'm at now. And this story I started on about 2 years ago. And like I said, it's gone through 5 different titles. And I've probably rewritten the story 3 or 4 times. I mean, a lot of folks, like, what's your writing process? And mine is never that is something I would inspire others to do because it's so messy and it's so long and drawn out. Because I don't do a lot of planning. Usually an idea pops in my head and I just start writing. There was a point when I was writing Legion of Fire that I wrote like 20,000 words in one afternoon.
Wow. Oh my God, that's half a novel.
I don't even know how to do it. But when I have the ideas that come so quickly, I just like have to write them down. I don't really think about it. And then later in the story, I get messed up because I don't have anything. I don't have anything drafted out like characters and, some of the backstory other than the main people. Like, oh, what was their name? How's it spelled? Where are they from? How was that town spelled again? Because, fantasy novels, everybody always wants to spell everything weird. I don't, but I want people to be able to pronounce the names and the towns without going. But my writing process is such a hot mess because I'll write and I'm writing the second book of The Legend of Chaos right now, which is going to called City of Thieves. And I've probably read that story 3 times now, but I also started on it about a year ago. And as I'm about 70,000 in, but I wrote it and then had to change the whole story because I changed Legion of Fire completely. Like, it's a different story than what it was a year ago. And so, my process is chaotic and messy, and I wouldn't recommend anybody try it.
We all have those things that we do when we're writing to try and, keep our focus or keep us going. And I think sometimes other people are just like, okay, that's fine.
Now, I do
but
everything I do like that, though. I mean, in my work around the house, I mean, even if I'm just cleaning house, like, I will tornado the place before it gets clean, because I'm just a very chaotic person before things come together. So, just finishing book 1 is a huge feat for me, and it's been such an insane process that I can't imagine quitting now, because a couple of years ago I was like, I'm not ever writing. It really took a toll out of me, never doing it again. So now I can't imagine not writing the story.
I love that. I love that change in your direction and that change in your perspective. And one thing you mentioned, you spell things regular so people don't have to struggle through your book. And I really appreciated that. That was actually something that stood out to me, like, from the very beginning, was like, your characters' names, like Sebastian and Cyrus and Baron, they're fantastical without being like confusing or hard to read or anything like that.
Or it's a 7-letter name and it has 1 vowel in it. Yeah. No, my biggest problem is I'm a very factual person, I guess. So when I'm writing these books, I'm constantly like, wait a minute, what did they call pants back in the 12th century? And then I'm like, why does it matter? I can call pants Steve, and people would just be like, oh, and her little Steve.
That's officially what I'm calling pants now.
I was thinking earlier, I was like, man, I should make a clothing line. Patent.
Steve, the accessible pants wear for everyone.
I know, and shorts can be Stephanie. No, I have a big problem with letting go of it being fake and fantasy. So I'm constantly checking how people actually lived in certain circumstances and what they wore and how they spoke from the medieval times. And I'm like, I don't have to do that. Stop it. But I'll make the name, everything pronounceable for the most part.
Well, I think that helps make your book more accessible, and just easier for people to read in general, because then you're not sitting there and you're not having to, you don't have to Google words to find out what they mean, or just, it makes the reading process so much smoother, which makes the book more enjoyable in the long run,
Oh, definitely, because I mean, some of my favorite, my first ever fantasy book that I ever really fell in love with was The Hobbit, and I read that in middle school, and that was back in the day when everybody used to do book reports, and all of my friends did a book report on The Hobbit, and I'm just like, fine, I'll do it too. And I loved the book, but I was like, I don't know what half these words are.
Yeah, I feel that a lot. I really enjoyed The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but some of that was hard to get through and hard to read through.
It was, and even like reading Game of Thrones rather than just watching it was the same way. Like, I really did, but there was points where I'm like, I'm struggling to what was 10 on TV is like a 3-hour read, and I was like, I don't want it to be that way for anybody else. So changing the way that fantasy books are written.
I like that. I also think having that, it's like not modern, but it is that modernization of your story, even though it's set in a past time, brings that air of familiarity to your reader as well.
Right. I don't want people to have to constantly just get bored with the language, because I love language of the old times, but I can also get really bored with it or get really giggly with it. and then it takes away from the story. So I'm like, if people understand what I'm trying to say, then that's the most important part.
Agreed. I agree. So you have this beautiful book that you've been working on forever. It's finally available. Let's talk about the storyline a little bit. I think that the story you've created with Sebastian especially, it was so, it spoke to me a lot, that, that journey of self-acceptance and self-awareness and personal responsibility, which I think is something that everybody has to come to terms with at some point. And then you just brought like this magic, and he's a prince and he's got all this stuff going on. And let's talk a little bit about like the storyline and what inspired you to write this fantastic epic of dark fantasy.
I think a lot of kind of think back to myself when I was 15 to, he goes to 19 in the story, 15 and 19 years old, of being just this obnoxious and rambunctious person who is not happy with his life. And, at the beginning of the story, we meet Sebastian as a 15 to 17-year-old boy, and he hates life and he wants to run away all the time. And I was the same way at his age. And he has no idea that he's gifted at all. He has no idea that he's powerful because his father hid it from him because it's a really dark omen. And so when he finds he has these powers, his whole world comes crashing down, and he has to figure out how to wield this power in the positive way rather than the negative way that the prophecy states. Because he is the reincarnation of an ancient god, that the dragon, who committed genocide. He wiped out most of the world. And so since it's the reincarnation of this person, everybody's just like, oh no, we kill him.
That's a heavy thing to be born with. Like, that's a heavy thing to be carrying with you. This is what your past was, and this is where you came from. But what a powerful like redemption story of him making these active choices to not be like the person that was before him, and make active choices to try and make his world better, even though he faces a lot of discrimination, not just because of who he is and his powers and stuff like that. But I think another element that makes your story so special is the fact that Sebastian is a gay main character. And when I was reading your book, reading about how fearful he was for his father to find out, and that inner turmoil, and his love interest Cyrus, and how Cyrus's family felt about Cyrus being queer, and that did not go down well at all. And it was just, it was very powerful to me when I was reading it, and seeing this very real thing that happens all the time, every day. And you handled it so beautifully and so delicately, and there's this awareness for homophobia, I feel, in your book, that you handle so graciously, and you just make it very real, but you offer a lot of hope and determination for your characters, and they find their people in spite of all of that.
And I think a lot of my past, growing up in a very small part of Northwest Arkansas, going to high school, my graduating class was like 75 to 80 people. And for me, being, this little goth kid who wore all black, who, had tarot cards and read witchcraft books, was completely unaccepted in a community of people who were your typical rodeo cowboy farmer type people, that everything was very strict to a certain religion, to a way people should act. And being bullied and pushed around my whole life, it kind of molded into the story. But I have friends who have come out over the last few years, and just listening to their struggles, the ones that grew up at the same time I did, listening their struggles and being scared to come forward. Because in the 80s, you didn't talk about that kind of thing. And so it played in the roles of several of the characters in the story. In book 2, we meet some brand new characters, and some of them are queer and some aren't, but we run into kind of a revolution in the way people accept the, you know, the king being queer. And I think it's huge for anybody that's struggling to tell their personal story, I guess.
I 100% agree. I think that when it comes to queer representation in media, so much of it is misrepresented. We're used as like sensational or side characters, or our stories are used to like push a specific narrative, and they're not just allowed to be what they are, and it not be made a big deal of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think this book that you've created is a trend-setting book. I think it's very forward-thinking, and it's such a fresh perspective because it's just this young man who's just trying to live his best life, and he's got a lot on his plate, but he's just trying to do the best that he can, and that's all that matters.
Well, and he's been kicked around his whole life. He grew up, let's see, one, two, third in line for the and so the thing, how many siblings does he have? He's third
A
in
lot.
line. You know, them people back then, they had a lot of babies. So he never thought that he would ever have to take any kind of major role of a position of power. And he, like me, a lot back then and today, I don't like to be bothered a whole lot. I like to have my privacy. I like to disappear on my own sometimes. And he's the kind of person that just wants to just get away from everybody and not talk to people. And, you know, obviously he doesn't get this.
No.
No, not at all. He has to like figure out how to live in a world where he's thrown into just the rat race. And I was a very quiet and shy, and I had severe social anxiety until I was thrown into the type of job that forced you to talk to, you know, lots of people, anywhere from 50 to 150 people a day. And it was just like, I understand where he's here.
I really like this. I really like the message that you have too, of like destiny versus free will versus, you know, like personal choice, and is everything already landed? Is everything already decided for us, or do we get actual say in the kind of people that we are and the kind of life that we live? I think that's like a very something you struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So am I just made this way, or this is how my life is always going to be, or do I do I get a choice in what's happening here? So I really like that element in the book too.
I've always been the person in the group of friends that people come to for advice, or people just like to hug me, and I'm just the kind of person that's like, okay, fine, what do you need? But I was really selfish when I was, you know, 17, 18, 19, like most people are at that age. And like Sebastian, he was just a very angry person when he was a teenager. And I think it's just because he got so much thrown at him at once. And I was the same way. I just, you know, my parents kicked me out when I turned 18, and I had, you know, no money, nowhere to go. So I just kind of had to like figure it out on my own. And, you know, Sebastian kind of faced a similar situation where he suddenly gets thrown life to like, he don't have a clue, but he's got to figure it out right now or he's going to die. And I think a lot of my past has gone into this character. It's just the only difference between him and me is that I'm not, you know, a teenage boy. Not today.
There's so many themes in your book though that I think we all experience and we'll go through, that just even though it's a fantasy book, I feel like there's really something in it for everybody when they read it. You know, you just have and I am astounded at all of the diverse characters that you have. I don't know how you wrote and kept track of so many, and you made them all feel real. Like that is a real skill, to be able to have so many characters and juggle them well and make them all feel like they're real people, and to make your reader invested in them.
And that's a part of the writing process thing that I said is a hot mess, because I can't say how many times I have reread the story so many times just because I was like, what was that one guy's name? or what did he do and why was he a part of the story? Because some folks in the story have very short roles, but they're really important characters. And we got a lot more of the villain side of the story book too. We were having a discussion on Discord yesterday about
Yeah.
write them, and I was just like, well, I really had to dig into it and realize I had to stop and go, ooh, I really didn't do a whole lot to explain the villain side of the story in book one, but it's really going to come out in part two. And keeping up with that person and everything that they did in book one was such a nightmare, even though they had a role, because I didn't write it all down. And, you know, that's, I don't know, I'm a lot better at, you know, taking notes on my phone of, ooh, this person did this person did that. So now I don't have to go flipping through the pages of the book for 20 minutes to try and find it.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
Yeah.
So this is a series. So how many books do you have planned for the series in total?
For the longest time, it's been 3 books. As I've been writing book 2, since it's not complete yet, I'm not 100% sure. Writing 3, but writing book 2, there's so much information to fill in that kind of like, you know, book 1, the original story was like 160,000 words. So,
That's a big book.
very that book, and started part.
I mean, this already is a thick book.
And it's crazy because, you know, I think it's like just a smidgen over 400 words or something like that. And my son came in one day and he said he read the cover of the book and then he saw how long the book was and was like, nope. But he's 14, so 14-year-olds aren't going to read it unless there's pictures. And, you know, it's not as long because most of them, they're like me, they can't focus on that long. No offense to any 14-year-olds in the world.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I believe that the average number of words for a fantasy type book is between like 150 and 200,000 words.
Oh, I know. That's why I was like, I don't know which book is behind me back here that's enormous. I think it's Midnight Sun, which is one of the Twilight books, and it's like that thick. Just like,
yeah, it's a big boy.
And I used to have all the time in the world to sit down and read. I think I read through the Twilight books, the Harry Potter books, and a few others that are back there in like a matter of, you know, weeks or days. And now it's like I pick a book and I'll read like 3 pages and I'm like, okay, I have other things to do.
Yeah, you have books to write, so you could keep up with this one.
I'm telling you, it is a full-time job outside of having, you know, a full-time job. And I'm grateful I run my own business and I work for myself so I can really schedule my own time, you know, for anything I want to do. Like if I have a day to where I'm like, I have to sit down and do this. And I'm like, you know what, I'm not working today. Before, I 50 hours a week and you couldn't do that. So I don't know how I write Legion of Fire when I used to work 50 hours a week.
It takes a lot of balance and a lot of dedication, a lot of motivation, I think.
Well,
Everybody wants to make writing a full-time job, but when you actually like sit down and do it, you know, you realize how much time you actually have to spend to make it happen. It's a lot.
well, it's like I'm so busy that, you know, when I would come home, my last job, I was a truck driver for a car dealership. And my hours, sometimes they were 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 6. Like the first time we talked, I was at a truck stop in Tulsa, Oklahoma in my car hauler and it was 7 o'clock at night. And I was like, sorry, I've been working for 14 hours, but here I am. And I don't know how I managed to write. And I sat on my couch every single night while my would be watching a show on TV and I would just write. And that's how the first fire came about. It was just every evening that I got home at a decent time, that I had an hour or two. I would just sit and watch TV, and I would just type, 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 and write it out. And over 2 years, it became the story it is now.
So let's talk about when you decided that you were going to publish. What was your publishing journey like? Obviously you signed with Curious Corvid, and I am so happy to be representing you. I really enjoyed getting to know you and working with you. You're just a really lovely person, and you're so easygoing, which I appreciate so much, But as you were looking, I think it's always helpful, I feel like, to other writers or other people in the community to kind of see what the journey is like to becoming an author. So what was that like for you?
It was really difficult because when I self-published my horror and my nonfiction years and years ago, I knew nothing about the publishing industry. I just knew that you can go on and upload files and they would magically create a book for you. And one second. Somehow these two books came out of it.
Oh, look at that.
From this is my first ever horror novel. It's called Saving Anna. I actually had the inspiration for this story back in like 2009, and I had a nightmare, and that's how this came out. And it's a pretty big book, but I knew nothing about editing, so it's a terrible story the way it's. And this is a personal memoir, and it's called The Supergirl's Guide to the Galaxy. And it was, when I was younger, I used to struggle with drug addiction really bad. So when I actually got away from that lifestyle, I wrote a memoir about it. And it's been taken off of Amazon because I'm just not, it kind of affected me negatively to write it. And I think that happened. That's kind of what after writing is. After writing, really good, but people reading it kind of felt like they were digging too much into my personal life, and I didn't like it. And so the whole writing world, it's just, you got to find your niche, because writing horror out for me because I'm not good at it. Writing fiction, if you're the kind of person like me that you're very private and you have anxiety and you're just weirded out by people being all up in your business, and you don't want to write nonfiction. But when the idea of writing fantasy came to me while I was watching Game of Thrones, it was just like, I can make a thing about anything that I want. And I can be as weird as I want to be. And nobody can say anything about it. And so starting, and getting writing, it was just such an eye-opening thing. And I've been asked by people, like, are you going to write anything else besides this type of book? And I was like, absolutely. I'm trying to write a sci-fi, but I'm doing a really bad job.
You have a science fiction story that's going to be in the Corvid Grimoire.
I do. It was very, that was a story that just kind of came to me out of the blue. I was sitting there and I was thinking, and I was like, I want to make something that's spooky, but I'm really bad at writing spooky. So how can I make it twisted? And I'm like, how about something like psychological that is science fiction? And that would help me maybe with the science fiction series that I have for, that I've started like 20,000 words, but I'm just at this point to where I can't focus on it. So we'll see how it goes. I'm some advice from some of our sci-fi writers.
We do have a couple of them.
I know. And I think whenever I finish book 2, I'm going to sit down and message some of them and be like, hey, give me pointers because I'm lost.
I think that's one of the nice things about our Discord too, is like the conversation we were having about villains and writing their dialogue and their descriptions and stuff like that. And you got to talk with some of the other people in our community that aren't our authors, and that's super cool. And it's just kind of writers helping each other out.
I loved it. I know it was a lot of fun because, whenever I sat down, I was chatting with I can't think of her name, with this person. They were throwing out their ideas, and I'm like, oh, that's a really great idea. I actually really love that movie and that movie that you mentioned, and that sounds like so much fun. So our Discord is really, really cool. It's very helpful. And then when Grace brought up the writing circle, I was just like, ooh, maybe that'll help me get my sci-fi on track.
I was so proud of you guys. I was like, look at you guys making your own little sub community.
I know, I love it. I love the idea of it. And I'm the kind of person that if I come up with ideas, I'm just gonna let it swirl around in my little brain because I'm like, who's gonna think that the respond?
I think that's the benefit of being part of a writing community. I mean, you can do it on your own 100%, but to have people you can trust and to, bounce off ideas with who are going to be honest and, have actual feedback for you, but not in a way that is like competitive or jealousy or, just looking to break you down for any reason.
And that's the wonderful thing about being a part of the CCP community is everybody is super supportive. Like I'm not used to that. My last, group of coworkers that I had, it's just turned into such a toxic work environment that I kind of invoke myself again in life. But coming to CCP, everybody's just like, oh, hi, I am so happy to meet you. Even the authors that have got books, out there and, they're really doing their thing really well. And there's some amazing books that our authors have. And just how happy they are just to meet each other. It's just like, where have all these people been?
I know. That's how I feel too.
I mean, I'm where and meet people and get that same kind of reaction in real life, and I don't know what it is, but I think everybody's found like this common comfort zone, and maybe it's just people that are just weird as me that are coming together in this quiet little corner of darkness where they're comfortable being themselves. I guess I'm just not used to that. A lot of folks that I'm used to being around on a daily basis are nothing like me/us. And so I'm so used to putting on this customer service persona, and I'm not used to being myself. So now that I can, it's really fantastic. And I encourage people to come and join our Discord.
And I think when you are able to be who you are and just kind of chill out and relax, it lets you write the things that you're meant to write. You have that freedom and that accessibility to just do whatever it is that you want to do. And I just think that's so important because then we get good books like these that are trendsetters and they're breaking the mold for what is traditional fantasy and traditional storytelling. And I mean that like 100%. I'm so proud to represent, I'm proud to represent all of my books, but I'm really proud to represent this one particularly for all the different levels of storytelling that you're bringing into it. And for anyone watching who thinks that, wow, I need to have this book in my life, you can get it on Amazon and on Kindle. So this is the Amazon version here. So this is the hardback version. It's beautiful. You can also order it through any major bookstore, or if you're feeling real bougie, you can go onto the Curious Corbin website, and we have these fancy books with the book covers, and then each book comes with a signed book plate by Rey. Isn't that so pretty?
So cute. I was just like, I want to mess them up. How do I do these?
And then we also have paperback versions too, and the paperback versions are signed also. So you can get either one. And on our website, Rey made the coolest thing ever in the world. She made little scrolls. They're prophecy scrolls. They have the prophecy from her book on them. And it comes with a little sword as a bookmark.
Prophecy
and a bracelet and a little dragon tattoo. So it's like a whole big set that you can get with your book.
I know. I was just thinking, I was just like, what's a bunch of weird stuff that I would like? And
I love it.
The prophecy is an in-book one. It's actually posted. I have it right now at the beginning of book 2. And so this is kind of everybody's like sneak peek as to, what the heck is going on? Because, book 1 is a lot of introductory. It's a lot of, okay, this is kind of the origin story instead of making people. And book 2 is going to kind of explain a lot to people that may be like, wait a minute, how did this happen? So the prophecy was fun. The little swords cracked me up because I saw them online for sale, and it said they were book covers, or no, placeholders, bookmarks. And I was just like, they're kind of pointy. I was like, people are going to think I'm giving them little things to stab people with. And I'm like, hey.
I mean,
you do you.
Just don't get caught. And then you even made a wax stamp for it, too.
I have a whole bunch of these little swords. But some of the swords were like fencing swords, so they didn't really go in with the story. But yes, the wax stamp seal is something that I've never done before. So I had to practice a lot with a heat gun and my wax sticks and my little stampy stamp just to figure out how to get it. Because the stamp is the dragon seal. And I was just like, I want it to look good.
Yeah, that's a lot of detail on there.
I probably threw away like 20 scrolls because the stamps just didn't come out. And I'm kind of very judgmental of my own artwork. So when I make something, I'm like, I don't like it, throw it all away. Yeah.
Well, I use the wax stamps. I do that thing on our cards whenever I send books out. And I learned that if you take and you put the wax on and then you put your stamp on the wax, after you're done, like if you're doing a whole bunch of stamping, put your wax stamper, put it on an ice pack.
Ooh.
And it won't overheat, and then it won't get all gunky as you farther along that you go. A lot of trial and error there too.
I had that issue, and I had an issue with my wax, my little wax gun thing, getting the wax too hot.
Yeah.
So I had to keep unplugging it because I don't have that cool little spoon thing.
Well, if anyone ever wants one, we have them listed on our website now, so you can be as fancy as we are.
I saw that. I'm like, I have to get one of those because I think I ruined my husband's $10 Harbor Freight wax gun, but he'll live.
Well, they turned out really cool, and I love how the paper looks because the way that it looks and feels, it's like you're just, you feel like you're going to go on like a magical quest or something with it, and I just love it. I love the aesthetic. It
was really hard finding like the proper scroll paper because I'm an Amazon shopper, hardcore. I mean, it hates me. And I bought one that people were saying that was really good, but it was just like colored printer paper. It was really stiff. It was really hard to fold up, and I was like, this isn't going to work. So I bought something else small, and I was just like, I'm never going to find the right paper. And finally I found stuff here, and at first I was like, this stuff is just not going to work for me, but I burned it so many times that it finally made it like pliable, and I was like, oh, better work. And I had to make it off a year before I threw them away and started over from scratch again.
Oh my goodness.
How eccentric I am about everything I do. I'm just like, I don't appreciate my own handiwork enough.
Clearly.
Oh, I'm bad. I'm very very OCD about the way things are done, even though everything is still slightly messy in my life.
Well, I think it's great. I think it makes a beautiful book bundle. You just, you have everything right here ready to go so everybody can start their own epic fantasy adventure. So thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening to talk about your writing process and everything. Before we go, I wanted to ask you one more thing. So now that you've come through the other side and you have your book here, you're working on your second one, things are going pretty good, what's some advice that you would offer to other authors who are just starting out? Something maybe you wish you had known when you were starting your journey?
I mean, a lot of when I started writing, like I said earlier, I didn't know anything about writing, so I made a lot. I didn't know anything about the editorial side of writing. I didn't know anything about the marketing and the publishing side. So, I mean, I think if folks are really into, whether they're wanting to find a publisher or self-publish, it's just like, do your research and really look and make sure you're not writing something that's been done 400 times, because nobody's going to care. But also if you have to take some classes on editorial or just like flow and writing process, I highly recommend it. I've read a million ever since I sent Legion of Fire off to editing and got some notes back, and I was just like, I know that. But it's just taking the time to really like learn how it's, anybody can write. Not everybody can write well if they don't understand what they're doing. It's just like any job. If you've never been educated on, certain aspects of it, to do a good job. So it's just really time and research and ask people questions, ask, successful authors questions about what they did. It's just very important.
Writing is a craft. Just like anything else, it takes time to learn how to do it and develop it. And I feel like maybe sometimes, I think some people can be more predisposed to it, just as with any other kind of art. But when it comes to actually making something out of it and furthering it, it takes time. And I think a lot of people get discouraged if they're not automatically good at it. I saw this quote once, and it was, the only difference between creative and non-creative people is the passion and drive to create. Everything else can be learned. Anything can be learned. All that matters is whether or not you're willing to actually do the work to get there.
Right. And, I know a lot of folks, like my husband, for instance, he's, I guarantee 140% that he will never read this book. And he'll never read a book because that's just not something that he has a passion for, or it's not something that he feels that, is his level of expertise. And so, people, I guess, like for me, for instance, like I learned what I wasn't good at writing, years ago, probably 4 years ago. I learned, okay, that isn't for me. Let's try something different. And I hope a lot of folks that are coming into writing can have a network where they got the people to learn and figure out what they're good at.
I agree. Well, if anyone's watching here and you're looking for a writing community or a safe place to talk about the writing industry, you're more than welcome to join our Discord. You can find the link to our Discord on our website under the Nights with Ebon Pinion page. And if you click on the Discord logo, it'll take you right into our channel. And we're always happy to welcome in new people. And it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to be part of our community. I'm a firm believer that if we share our knowledge with each other and lift each other up, that when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. So,
very true. Everybody's very accepting and welcoming of every walk of life with this Discord, with this company and everything. We have such a diverse range of authors that every adores each other, and it's very refreshing. Where if you think, oh, I'm not going to fit in there, you will.
Oh, yeah. We're all a little weird. We're all a little crazy. It's fine. We bask in that.
No, it's a lot of fun.
Well, as a reminder, if anyone would like to purchase Rey's book, you can find copies on Amazon and on Kindle. And then if you would like to, we have signed copies available on our website. We have 2 versions. We have the hardback, and we also have the paperback, and they look so nice. Oh, and one more super cool thing about Rey's book. If you guys like book maps, it's got a freaking book map.
That book.
How cool is that?
I've remade that map so many times in my life that it's unreal how much time I've spent trying to figure out the perfect map. And now I have to create one for book 2 because it's a whole different country. And basically made the, like, I'm exhausted.
I saw this one TikTok of this guy who writes fantasy, and he like makes maps for his stuff, and he threw dice across his table and he traced around the dice, and then where each of the dice was were his cities. And I was like, that's kind of clever though.
That's a really cool. I mean, I'm not an artist. If I sit down with something, pen and paper, it never comes out very pretty. But I have this website that I use on the computer. It's like $5 a month, and you can create maps. And one of my sons uses it for D&D as well.
Nice.
It's really cool because you can create it and you can save your process as you go, or you can just wipe it out and start all over. And like I said, with book map, I have probably remade that map 100 times before okay, this one's cute.
I love it. I was so excited about it when we were first talking and you're like, "Oh, and I have a book map." And I was like, "Sold." Done.
I showed it to my household first. I was just like, what do y'all think before I even tell anybody that this exists?
Everybody that I tell, I'm just like, it has a book map, and they're like, "Show me now."
Oh, well, I always thought every time I ever read a book, I always put the way like the country's gonna look in my head, even just watching like fantasy movies that I read the books to. I'm just like, okay, this world's here, that world's there, that world's there. But I figure, I mean, most great fantasy books have a map, and I need to have one too. And it's about the only artistic thing that I'm good at. So,
Well, it turned out perfect.
thank you.
I love it. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me for this evening to talk about your book and show everybody how beautiful it turned out. If you are watching this later, I'll be posting it on our YouTube channel with different links in our Discord and here on Instagram. But if you would like to find a copy of Rey's book one last time, you can find it on Amazon Kindle, or you can buy signed copies or special book bundles on the Curious Corbin website. Please be sure to follow Rey, show her some love. She's done an amazing job with this book, and I'm so proud of her. So thank you so much, Rey, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
All right, thank you guys. Love you.